Welcome to the DPN Deep Dive. This is where we give you brief overviews of research published in the journal NPP Digital Psychiatry and Neuroscience. Today we're looking into something pretty fascinating. It's about how traumatic stress can actually change even our most basic visual processing. We're not just talking about emotional reactions here.
Exactly. And what's really interesting, I think, is that so much PTSD research, it usually zooms in on the brain's threat circuits, fear responses, but this study looks at non-effective visual processing, just basic seeing. It really suggests trauma's impact might be, well, broader than we often think.
That wider lens is definitely what caught my eye too. The study we're diving into today is called Traumatic Stress Alters Neural Reactivity to Visual Stimulation. It's work done by Dr. Nathaniel Harnett and researchers over at Harvard Medical School. So for the study, they had two groups. 24 people who'd recently experienced trauma, they call them RTE participants, and 16 people without recent trauma, the NRTE group. Everyone went into an fMRI scanner, the machine that maps brain activity.
Right, functional magnetic resonance imaging. It shows brain function in real time.
Yeah. And they were just looking at simple flickering checkerboards, plus some attention checks and rest periods mixed in. Pretty basic task.
Seems simple, yeah.
Okay, so let's get into the findings. Because this first one, it really stood out to me. The RTE participants, the ones with recent trauma, they showed greater deactivation in their visual cortex compared to the other group. What does deactivation even mean here? We're talking about just looking at a pattern.
Yeah, it's almost counterintuitive, isn't it? My take is it points towards a kind of general suppression. Like the brain is actively dialing down its processing of basic visual information right after a trauma, turning down the volume on the visual world, so to speak.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's not just about reacting differently to, say, scary pictures. It seems to be a much broader dampening effect on just seeing.
Okay, dialing down.
Mhm.
And it wasn't just the main visual area either, right? They looked deeper.
That's right. They found altered activity in the dorsomedial prefrontal cortex, too, the DMPFC.
Ah, the DMPFC. And what was different there?
So the NRTE participants, the control group, their DMPFC was more active when they were looking at the checkerboards, but the RTE group, their DMPFC, didn't show that increase during stimulation. Actually, it was more active during the rest periods instead.
Huh. And the DMPFC is involved in.
It's really key for things like attention and detecting salient cues, figuring out what's important in the environment. So this finding might mean that acutely after trauma, the brain is maybe less engaged with external stimuli, less focused on the task at hand. It's like its attention is shifted maybe more inward during those rest times.
Okay, so potentially less processing of the outside world, maybe more internal focus. Then there was connectivity, right? How different brain areas talk to each other.
Yes, exactly. They looked at functional connectivity, and they found that in the NRTE group, the visual cortex showed stronger coupling, stronger connection with the paracentral gyrus during the visual task.
Paracentral gyrus. That's linked to motor responses.
Precisely. Think movement, responding to what you see. That connection was stronger in the NRTE group while they were looking at the checkerboards. But in the RTE group, that specific connection wasn't really observed during the task.
So the link between seeing something basic and preparing a potential physical response might be what disrupted after trauma.
That's what it suggests, yeah. It implies that trauma could be kind of messing with the integration between sensory input and these behavioral or motor circuits. It might affect how someone interacts with their environment, even on this very fundamental level.
Right, so let's tie this all together. We have this general dialing down of visual processing, altered attention signals in the DMPFC, maybe a weaker sensory motor link. What does this actually mean for someone developing PTSD symptoms?
Okay, this is where it gets really clinically relevant. Within that RTE group, the people recently exposed to trauma, they found that less neural reactivity in the visual cortex, so more of that deactivation we talked about, was associated with higher PTSD symptoms.
Which symptoms specifically?
Things like intrusion symptoms, flashbacks or unwanted memories. Also, negative changes in thinking and mood and hyperarousal symptoms like being jumpy or constantly on edge.
Wow, okay.
And there was another link too. Remember that connectivity between the visual cortex and the paracentral gyrus?
Yeah, the one that was weaker in the RTE group during the task.
Right. Well, the average strength of that connection, measured at the start, actually predicted PTSD symptom severity 6 months later in those RTE individuals. Higher initial connectivity was linked to worse symptoms down the line.
So these changes in how the brain handles even simple visual information seem directly tied to the actual experience of PTSD, both now and potentially later.
Exactly. It really underlines that trauma's impact isn't confined to how we process the rest of our emotions. It can fundamentally change the brain's basic machinery for seeing the world. And these changes seem to contribute to those really difficult symptoms people experience.
It's a profound shift in thinking, moving beyond just threat circuits.
It really is. It highlights how pervasive the effects of trauma can be on brain function.
So that leaves us with a thought, something for you to consider. If trauma can alter how our brains perceive the world at this very basic fundamental level, what else might we be missing about its effects? And, maybe more importantly, how can we use this kind of deeper understanding to create better ways to support healing and recovery? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.